Rooftop prospecting has always been one of the slowest steps in the rooftop development. Ourselves, solar developers, we used to spend months scanning maps and chasing leads manually. And Planno was born from that frustration. We wanted to make the process faster, more intelligent, data-driven. So we built this platform that helps solar developers identify, qualify, and prioritize commercial and industrial rooftops automatically, turning what used to take months into hours of research in the end of the day.
Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Peter. Nice to be here.
And nice to have you here. So, Daniel, this is a quite exciting discussion I've been looking forward to for a long time, to speak to somebody who's an expert on CNI. So obviously finding the right rooftop is quite difficult for a CNI project. What is the toughest and slowest part for that business, and how do you guys tackle that?
So rooftop prospecting has always been one of the slowest steps in the rooftop development. Ourselves, solar developers, we used to spend months scanning maps and chasing leads manually. And now on Planno was born from that frustration. We wanted to make the process faster, more intelligent, data-driven. So we built this platform that helps solar developers identify, qualify, and prioritize commercial and industrial rooftops automatically, just turning what used to take months into hours of research in the end of the day.
Can we dig a little bit deeper into how a project typically works without your software? What is the traditional approach?
So mostly of the projects, most of this research, most of the prospecting was done by hand with a lot of guesswork. Developers would spend hours looking at satellite images, driving around industrial parks, talking to local brokers, juggling Excel sheets with coordinates and LinkedIn profiles. It was really slow, expensive, and very inefficient process. Those are the companies that actually do prospecting. Many don't do it because it's so time and resource intensive. In markets where labor is expensive, it's simply not feasible for smaller companies to have people spending weeks on manual research. So instead of it, a lot of teams just rely on referrals or requests for proposals, which is great. Don't get me wrong, but they wait for opportunities to come. The problem is when you are not actively prospecting, you are not seeing the full market. So you'll be only accessing a fraction of the opportunity, and then becomes a natural, I would say, a ceiling to the growth of those companies.
Okay, and everyone in solar is talking about sales funnels, leads, but I guess the real challenge would be good data, right? So how is prospecting done today, and maybe what is broken about it?
Yeah, well, prospecting, it's very fragmented. So data is very fragmented. You have satellite images in one place, as I was just saying, when people are doing prospecting on satellite imagery. Company data is another place, contact details in another place, and it's not easy way to connect them. Sales teams end up spending more time gathering and cleaning the data than actually selling solar, and their main goal is sell solar here, not just doing the job of data scientists collecting data spread everywhere.
And when it comes to the biggest challenges, what do you see are the biggest inefficiencies, or maybe the blind spots that teams identify when it comes to CNI opportunities?
Yeah, well, I think the teams often end up targeting the wrong roofs, especially when they rely mainly on referrals and incoming requests for proposals, and we see a lot of that. They miss entire clusters of potential customers that are right there, but simply not visible to them. They are prospecting on another area, another place. So I would say that the real blind spot here is scale. Most companies don't see the full picture of where the real opportunities are. But on top of that, I think that another big issue is duplication of effort. Different teams or even different offices might be working independently and chasing the same opportunities without realizing it. So you waste time and resources without expanding your reach.
Yes, in these days, reach and efficiencies are one of the most important aspects of how you run your business. So it's quite a key challenge. And if you look at how Planno can help you turn data into actual deal flow, how would that work?
So we centralize everything in one platform. You have the geospatial data, you have business and contacts data, property data, energy data, and we take all of this. Everything is integrated in Planno. So instead of, let's say, lists of coordinates in an Excel file, teams get access to qualified prospects that can act on immediately, complete with the contact insights, just ready to go. So it's everything integrated. I think is a key pillar of our focus as integration as many data points as possible.
Of course. What do you feel that the role of AI would be in this business? How does it help you guys build efficiencies and gain a lot more leads at the same time?
You see, AI is extremely important here, and especially if you look to AI plus geospatial data, and it can really change the process of solar prospection. So AI can see patterns that humans cannot do it at scale. So in our case, we realized that rooftops have visual signatures that computer vision can detect automatically. So once we train our models, we can map out entire regions overnight instead of manually tracing buildings one by one. That's how companies are currently doing today, or most of companies pre-Planno. But AI can help on that and just generated large amounts of data that people can act on.
Yeah, and of course, I guess for humans, it's quite difficult to even grasp the amount of data that's thrown our way every single day. So once you have the data, how do you actually make sense of it?
So, so let me tell you a bit more about how the process actually works, how this works behind the scenes with Plano, how we gather the data and then we integrate that. So this is a mix of deep learning, the AI part, and let's say data fusion. So we start with using satellite and sometimes aerial imagery to detect and outline the individual rooftops in large areas. Then, with all these data points, we reach with public and or semi-public data sets, things like land registries, utility networks when available, industrial activity, company information from third-party sources. So integrate all of that. Once all the data is connected, our users can evaluate each rooftop potential based on the several parameters, the parameters that will make sense for them strategically to go after. So the result of this is not just a list of rooftops. So what we build up here is an interactive map that pinpoints exactly where the opportunities are. From there, our users can rank and prioritize them based on their own strategic criteria. So each company has its own strategies, own criteria to go after different types of rooftops, different types of sectors. So essentially, we are creating the tools that take for them to create their own opportunity map for development.
And I guess this is quite important, especially for multinational companies. If you target different countries at the same time and you have a strategy, it might take quite a lot of time to figure out what is the right segment for you to look into and how to approach them.
Yes, indeed, you're right on that. Each company has its own strategy. When someone goes to a new market, it's always challenging to start developing right away. So that's where we try to help here. So that's why also we have multiple markets, and currently we work with the multinationals that go to different markets and that they want to quickly start deploying, and we help them with that. Imagine that if they have to have a centralized system where a research team that goes to all the markets and do all this research intensively, the amount of hours spent is just incredible. And with AI, this system process can be much more streamlined.
And speaking of multi-country markets and regions, where do you see CNI exploding this year?
Well, I'll be biased because it's part of our market. So I've seen a lot of development in South Africa. 2024 was a great year. 2025 seems to be also a great year for South Africa. Then in Europe, you have some interesting markets. Italy is growing. I keep hearing, we are not in Italy, but we keep hearing about Italy growing. Germany has been always like a rock on the rooftop development. Portugal is surprisingly, or not surprisingly, regulation has 10 years, it's growing on a steady way. You see great companies, great international companies, multinational setting up there. Um, I guess Europe is still the market where rooftop solar is growing more or has the possibility to grow more. even in 2025.
And when we are talking about markets, you guys are active in more than 15 markets right now. So what would you say
Mhm.
is different between CNI and in Europe or in US and versus the Middle East, perhaps?
Well, it's very interesting and it's very different. So that is one of the advantages of being in the multiple markets and have a close relationship with our users on all these different markets. We keep hearing their feedback, and it allows us to build on that. But let me give you a picture. So in Europe, there's plenty of data, but it's extremely fragmented by regulation or because of simply like by language, and even by how industrial clusters are spread across the country, and people in Europe clearly understand that. That makes it challenging for solar companies to scale efficiently, especially for centralized teams, multinationals, as we discussed before, trying to operate across multiple markets. Now, if you go to the Middle East, it's almost the opposite. You have massive industrial clusters, logistics and manufacturing zones with huge rooftops, but very limited data beyond what you can see on the map. So property information is not available and regulatory might lack clarity at times. So all of this slows down planning despite enormous potential. In the US, it's a fascinating mix. So it's a little bit different also. So the data exists, very rich, and can be merged more easily thanks to a common language, some market structure which is similar. But what really stands out is how decentralized it is. Regulations often come from the bottom up at the county level, for example, even city or town level, or that creates a very dynamic environment where opportunities can quickly shift from one place to the other depending on local support, utilities, or permitting. So in the US, people talk about the solar coaster because of that. Things change, but there's always pockets of opportunities across even the same state. While in Europe, you have much more top down central government regulation creation. So, in short, Europe is fragmented but rich in data. The Middle East is centralized but data poor. And the US is dynamic and decentralized, but makes them one of the most exciting markets for digital prospecting in this case.
Yeah, and I guess there is no better analogy than this year, right? It's been truly a solar coaster across the globe, even sometimes on a monthly or even daily basis. Looking at US, looking at Europe as well. In Europe, this is the first year in the last 10 years that we have installed less solar than we used to in the previous years. So it's the first drop. Which is quite interesting, but hopefully next year we will bounce back and we will make up for the shortages there.
There's a lot of politics involved, and I tend to look to it more on the regulatory perspective and business opportunity. Yes, looks like it's interesting to see that that is the first year that this is happening.
So when it comes to regulation, helping or hindering business, what do you think it would be kind of the right formulation or the right kind of setup for a regulatory framework for solar to be scaling faster than it is today?
It's a very interesting question. There's a role, especially this technology, the Geospatial AI can help municipalities to better design the grid, better design the zoning, and allocate better understanding the reality.
So, in your opinion, which markets are still kind of untapped or misunderstood when it comes to CNI solar?
I would start with France. It's one of the largest rooftop solar markets in Europe in terms of its potential. We mapped out the country and it's almost 130 gigawatts of rooftop capacity that can be installed in total. And to put that in perspective, France entire installed power generation capacity across all energy sources is around 155 gigawatts last time I checked. So if you imagine that, see, even if we just use 20-25% of suitable rooftops for solar, it could represent a big step for the country's total power mix. The fact that not happened yet, it's not because of poor solar resources. France has a great irradiation, especially the south, but mainly due to policy direction and regulation. The country's long-standing focus on nuclear and some unstable and unclear regulations towards rooftop has slowed down for sure rooftop development here. Another region that I would like to mention that I see a huge untapped potential is the southern United States, excluding California. So From Arizona and New Mexico through Texas and even going towards Florida, you'll find huge industrial clusters with large rooftops, but very little solar. Interesting, the Northeast, with much lower radiation, has far higher rooftop solar adoption. So the challenge in the south of US is mainly economic to a certain degree and political. Low and subsidized electricity prices make it difficult for solar to compete. But the opportunity here is huge. And I believe that sooner or later, the same with France, all those rooftops will become a key part of the energy landscape for sure.
And when it comes to the different geographies, how do you see the different dynamism between them? So do you see the local support, if the local support takes a step forward, does it make it easier for you guys to help the businesses there install more rooftop, or how does it actually work?
Yeah, we have interesting insights on that, and I'll give you that clear example. We always see rooftops growing, rooftop development growing every time you have regulations that help that. But if you look to one of our key markets nowadays, which is South Africa, there are no regulations supporting solar, and the market is adding 2 gigawatts per year on rooftops between residential and industrial or commercial. So the key thing here is that people need that power. There was like a legacy problem in terms of load shedding there that pushed that to happen. So that to say that you don't need always regulations there. Regulations should not stop it from happening, and then some markets they stop it in purpose. But a simple economic need of those systems are sufficient nowadays. Solar is already cheaper than the grid in most of the places, especially if you are near to the equator where the radiation is higher.
Yeah, of course. I guess, most people think about the secondary steps, right? Regulation, the irradiance, etc. However, if you look at purely the financial side, solar is the cheapest source of energy you can get in most countries around the world, with a very few exceptions. So if this trend continues, and we've seen, the modules dropping every single year exponentially in the last 10 years or so. So if this trend continues, it's going to become really the absolute cheapest source of energy, even if you combine it with batteries and storage. And compared to nuclear, you can produce energy in most countries at around 6 cents a kilowatt hour, versus the nuclear, which comes up to like 9-10 cents. So it's quite a tricky balance, right?
Well, I think we still have some legacy from fossil fuel energies that can some existing political pressures and the society pressures for that to keep being used. But I think on the long term, we are going towards a different direction. We are going towards renewables. As you said, prices keep dropping. And if you look to solar, one argument that some people use is that, oh, solar panels cannot go to zero. It's true, but the same panel can generate more power. Efficiency is increasing every year, and I've been in the business for a few years already. And I remember when the first solar panel that we installed was 245 watt peak in a single panel. Nowadays, I just saw a release by one of the largest modules manufacturers. They released a 700 watt peak. So the same space, the same panel, but way more powers. We need to factor that in, not just like the price will not go to zero, but the price will be much more efficient over time. And that's why we can see that we are clearly on the way to make it financially feasible for many decades to come.
For sure. And if we ride this curve, it's going to get cheaper and cheaper every year. So that's also going to unlock a few more interesting use cases in terms of what we can use solar for and what we cannot, especially with the batteries as well. And on that note, how do you think or feel the data center use case is changing the whole landscape in terms of CNI?
That's a very hot topic being debated now, the data centers and the consumption. I'm a firm believer that rooftop solar can help a lot on the data centers. If you look to the grid, if you look to the generation of power required for those data centers, it's a huge amount of power. And it's not just about generating more. You are doing centralized generation for those extra power. You are using new lines, new transmission lines. We have to upgrade the grid in order to bring that extra power to the locations where data centers are located. So what if you look around, you look to a data center, where are they located? They are in the middle of industrial clusters. That's where they are. And if you look around, you see a lot of flat empty rooftops all across that area, all across those industrial clusters. Yes, we need to build up more centralized power. We have to build up more transmission lines. This can take 10 years. But if you start right now using all those rooftops around and connecting they are already connected to the grid, just connecting all this power, not just for the usage of that building, you can generate power for those data centers immediately. It will be a part of that grid, that smaller grid around the data center. And I think that's why I'm always advocating for rooftop solar being planned around data centers. And with the technology that we have today, with GeoAI, it's quite straightforward to build up that demand. And then even for zoning requirements where municipalities or markets, utilities, they can design based on that information that they can extract from GeoAI, the same rooftops that we extract for Planno, they can design which are the zoning that they will lack power, and then we can use the rooftops to provide. So there's already technology that can enable this to be very proficient in the installing capacity.
So just so I understand it correctly, so in terms of planning as well, we can already identify the gaps in the market in terms of regulation or where the power is needed, and the more kind of we decentralize these clusters and these energy producing assets, the better we can meet the demand that these data centers will have on a local level, right?
Yes, 100%. And this is a planning stage that can be done before you starting installing those data centers. Do not random place them across the market. Plan where you want to install so electricity supply can be properly designed.
For sure. If you're talking about the data centers and the AI that's coming out of them, it can actually fuel an own flywheel, right? So the AI can help us identify the most optimal location with the right grid connection, with the right zoning, with the right consumption profile as well to place it in the most optimal rate, right?
Yes, indeed. I think that this is something that we are going towards. 100%. AI race, it will be won not by the ones that will attract the strongest talent or the ones that will have the strongest chipsets, the latest NVIDIA chipsets, but it will be won by the ones that can provide the most reliable, cheap, and fast power to those electricity to those data centers.
For sure. And I read it somewhere the other day that a typical project of solar can be brought up to online within 17 to 19 months in the US, while if you need to build a new nuclear reactor, you're talking about 7 to 10 years, and that's even optimistic. So you clearly see the timelines as well.
Yes, but let me just say something. You're right on that, but the issue, especially for utility solar in US, it is not about building up the power plant. It's the interconnection requirement and the interconnection permits. This is the bottleneck there. While when you look to rooftop solar, and again, let me go back to rooftop solar to compare, the infrastructure is done. You are just connecting to the existing grid, and you can deploy instead of the 18 to 19 months. You mentioned 18 months. Instead of the 18 months, you can that takes to build, plus the permitting that might take 3 to 5 years, sometimes more. In rooftop solar, you can just have that done in 6 months. In 6 months, you are connected and deploying. So then, of course, utility solar that is much faster, is modular. You can increase over time. And then you have nuclear, as you're saying, it will take much more time. Gas-fired power plants, the same. So hydro, which is one of my favorite energy sources, takes like 10 years to build up. Outside of the permitting, just take 10 years to get up and running a hydro power plant.
Yeah, it's different projects, different velocities, but it all comes down to money, right? That the faster you can build, the faster you can produce, the lower capex you can have, the faster the ROI as well. So when it comes to these type of decisions, how do you guys approach this with Planno? How do you kind of help people make a better or more accurate prediction of what the potential of that roof is? Yeah, so when it comes to the data centers and the predictability of the energy profile, how do you guys, what are the kind of approaches that you guys use with Planno to help developers figure out what is the right project, where is the right location, and what is the most optimal type of setup that you can place on that roof?
Sure. We need to bear in mind that Planno is a sales-oriented tool. So everything that we design in the software is for a sales purpose. And we like to leave it a bit more open for each company to create its own strategy. I really believe that we should not give the companies, the software developers, like a prescribed list of deals to go after. We let them navigate, let them to go to these 100,000, 200,000 rooftops, help them with different features to find the right rooftops that match their um, strategic criteria for rooftop solar. So with that said, and you mentioned about generation, we use like very simplistic metrics to estimate a solar system in each rooftop based out of the outline that we received from the georeferenced outline we received from our AI models. And then what we do, we integrate that with the energy simulation softwares available online. So weather data, etc., all puts together and gives an estimation how much it can generate. But bear in mind that one of the things that is important for those rooftops, it's not as much as we can generate, because this is fairly straightforward to calculate, but it's more about how much they will consume, how much those buildings will consume. And while in some few markets that information can be found and integrated through public data sets or semi-public data sets, a lot of the times it doesn't. So it's the value of a salesperson, the value of a business developer in solar is actually to understand the market, and through that soft knowledge that they have from the market, use Planno to augment the intelligence they can gather along with their own already valuable insights they have from the market. So we kind of let it open so that people can input their experience and use Planno as a tool to find those rooftops.
So in other words, you actually need to know what type of needle are you looking for in a haystack before, just grabbing the data and you're going after everything. Of course, you need to know and follow your own strategy, and you need to figure out what makes sense for you as a developer, right?
And 100%, each company has its own set of, let's say, needles to find on the haystack. So we'll leave the companies to create their own competitive advantage. What we'll do is exactly providing the tools for that process of research to be much more efficient, and using AI, using data integration, and making all this being fused in one single environment, integrated in one single environment.
And sometimes there is some skepticism when it comes to the use of AI and the predictions that AI provides. How do you guys actually ensure that the data that you guys provide is accurate and also trustworthy for that use case?
So there's validation. I'll say that validation is key here. It's always with AI. So we cross-check our data with different data sets available. Of course, our data is much more updated and live. We bring a human quality control check to this data. So that to say that all the rooftops in our database are checked by humans to confirm that this is reliable data. This is paramount for us to have all this information checked.
So, and if we dive into the sales and the commercial strategy of the business, you're essentially changing the way how solar sales teams work. So what is so hard about shifting the traditional sales culture to more of a data-driven one?
So it's interesting, and it takes time. Salespeople are used to intuition and existing relationships a lot, but honestly, once they see how much faster they can fill their pipeline with verified data, the adoption curve accelerates quickly. And I just want to say that it's with this kind of technology, it's not about replacing the sales process. You just let them focusing on negotiating those leads with the clients. So far AI cannot do it that by them
And maybe that's going to change in the next couple of weeks or years as well.
maybe that will change.
You will send your AI bot and it will also sell and sign the customer as well. And then you can move on from there.
I don't know. This is a very interesting point, and I think a lot about it. But it's a different world when we send our bots representing us to discuss with other people, both going towards the optimal solution. But I think that there's a component of empathy that is always tough to empathy and relationship building. That it's there. It will always be there. So it's yes. I think a lot about that, but I'm not so sure that the interaction can be 100% replaced.
For sure. I mean, the human connection and the human touch is always very valuable. And it's further down the line by the time AI will hack us and, make sure to press the right buttons for us to sign the contract. But hopefully that's not going to happen anytime soon. And when it comes to the teams or the typical customers, what kind of teams do you see adapting Planno versus doing it manually? So what is the typical customer profile?
Sure. What currently all our customers are solid developers, so they are looking for rooftops on the markets they operate, and of course, being a lead sales prospecting tool, our users are all salespeople or marketing related people. So within that set of users, you have companies that will go faster to technologies like Planno. It's companies that will go a bit slower, And I mentioned before in our discussion that you have companies that still do not prospect. They still only rely on referrals. They rely on the request for proposals. So those are the ones that will not adopt first. You see, when I talk with the companies that are looking to Planno,
It comes to integrating that knowledge. How does Planno actually work with their existing CRM or the existing workflows?
so we've been working on that part of integration, not just CRMs, but I can also extend that to design software, and we got that request from our users a lot. So currently, what we are able to do with Plano is to do that export of that data, typically for the CRMs. But soon we are having API connections directly. Just click on a button and go straight to Salesforce, HubSpot, Pipedrive, whatever software people are using. The same with the design software, the Helioscope, PVKs, PVCs. So we can also source data. We can also source the next stage, data to the next stage. Either it is a financial stage, either it is a design stage, simply relationship management. That's how we are building it.
So I guess you guys are also moving towards a kind of open and more continued workflow, right? Because every company tries to build a workflow that's more as continuous as possible with as little friction between different tools as possible. So on that note, what do you think the future of solar prospecting will look like in 5 years?
Well, I really believe that majority of the companies will do prospecting digitally with tools like Planno. 5 years down the line, and within 10 years, everyone. Just like every company today uses a CRM software, or even if you go back, uses a software like Excel or Word like 20, 30 years ago, every solid developer will use AI-based prospecting tools in the next 5 to 10 years. It will become part of the standard sales operation. We've seen this in utility already, but on solar rooftops, we are just at the beginning now.
And do you see technology eventually connecting directly to with permitting and grid connections and also the financial data in one package, or how do you see this in the future?
No, I don't see this all in the future. I see this today, and we are almost there with that. So the technology exists already. In each market, just about integrating the right data sets available. That part still needs to be researched, but can be integrated. But the challenge for that speed is accessing the most updated satellite imagery. I think that we are heading towards that, a fully connected ecosystem where developers can see not just potential rooftops, but also grid capacity, interconnection, financing, eligibility, and feasibility, all integrated in one place. In some markets where data is fully digital and available, we are already doing that. Other markets, it's a matter of a few more years until everything is digital.
And on a personal note, how did you actually end up in solar?
Well, it's very interesting. So I actually came from an infrastructure and development background, and I joined the solar industry at a time where there weren't many human resources in renewables here in Dubai. So back then, it felt like the industry was like a little bit of a niche, which was amazing, but was a space full of untapped potential, especially here in the Middle East. We're talking about 10, 12 years ago. So I could see that so much still needed to be done here. So I gradually moved my career towards energy and solar projects specifically. Well, one thing led to the other, and eventually I focus on rooftop solar. And in rooftop solar, business development plays a central role. That's where I really found my place. What keeps me fascinating is how fast the industry evolves, honestly. Every year, new technologies, new markets, new challenges. It's never static. So it's amazing that what we can do in the solar business. It's very exciting to see that constant evolution taking place in the industry where you are operating.
And on that note, what has been your biggest challenge when it comes to building the software company that's moving in such a crazy market that's ever changing, and it's never standing still, and it's always in flux?
I think this challenge goes beyond solar or AI. It's something every tech founder faces. The other day, I heard someone saying that building a startup is like doing a sprint and a marathon at the same time. And I completely agree with that. Every day you are making quick decisions and implementing fast because speed matters in the end of the day. But at the same time, you have to stay aware that you are running a long race. So every small decision you take today needs to make sense months or years from now. So the hardest part in finding that balance, being fast to stay ahead, but steady enough to build something that lasts, that's the critical part. That's the paradox of a tech entrepreneur. And I think that what keeps it so intense and exciting.
And sometimes it's actually much better to make a bad decision fast than thinking about a good decision for a couple of days or weeks, and then the opportunity has passed you by already.
Yes, but it also depends. Also, what is the impact of that decision? There are decisions that you can take that are reversible, and the ones that are not reversible. So you can try and be fast on the ones that are reversible, but you have to think thoroughly on the ones that are not reversible. So it's always a matter of judging all the time what is the long-term impact of something. Being fast as a sprint, but at the same time, do not forget this is a marathon.
For sure, I think that was one of the techniques at Amazon, right? You always put the decisions in two baskets. One, the door that's one way, and the other one is a two-way door, so you can still come back from it. So it's quite important to keep that philosophy in mind as well. And on a final note, for anybody listening and who runs a solar development company or a solar sales team, who should reach out to you or Planno, and what's the best way to reach out?
So any company targeting commercial or industrial rooftops, either solar developers, EPCs, IPPs, investors, and I would say even policymakers, people that want to scale faster with better data. The easiest way is to honestly visiting our website, planno.io. Fill up the form and schedule immediately a demo, and they will be able to connect. Also, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and we'll make it happen.
Excellent. We'll make sure to link to both of those in the show notes below. And on a final note, if you were having this discussion in 2030, what do you think or hope Planno has achieved by then in terms of changing the industry and how solar is deployed globally?
I hope by then finding the solar opportunities, the rooftop solar opportunities, is no longer the bottleneck here. I hope that Planno helped make prospecting efforts easy, so every viable rooftop in the world can be identified and turned into clean energy generator. That's our goal here.
Excellent. So on that note, Daniel, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day, and let's do this again soon.
Great, Peter. It was a pleasure. Yeah, let's repeat. Cheers.